Welcome to this edition of ThePrint Softcover. Today we have with us a very, very amazing book. It's one of my personal favorites simply because it is about man's best friend, and I'm going to just show you the cover of the book and you'll know why this is so special. The Book of the Dog. This has been edited by Hemali Sondhi, and we have with us also Shobhaa. Again, I don't think needs any introduction altogether. I think the name is the brand in itself. And we have with us Tandrali, who's the head of adoption with Friendicos. Again, a name that is now synonymous with adoption of dogs in India. Welcome, all of you, to ThePrint Softcover. I'll just give a brief introduction about this book. So this is a book that has come together, I think, with around 45 anecdotes by different people. And they are people across profession who have come together to share their memories about their pets or dogs they have interacted with in their life. So we're going to talk about this book. I'll start with a question to Mali. So there have been books and movies about dogs for sure. So I just wanted to know why this book now, and how do you think it takes forward the narrative, which we obviously already know that, dogs are man's best friend. And everybody has something nice to say about dogs. But how does it take forward a narrative that's already there? And what does it do to existing, let's say, books or films?
Thank you, Tina. And thank you for introducing the book. Thank you, Shobhaa. Thank you, Tandrali. It's great everyone's here. So yes, there have been several books on dogs. There have been several books on dogs and their relationships with humans, and I've enjoyed a lot of them. But I think really, as a dog lover, as someone who's a pet parent, I'm always interested in people's stories about dogs. I can listen endlessly to stories. I can listen endlessly to anecdotes. And I think, every dog also is unique, right? Every relationship is unique. Every dog has their own distinct personality. A lot of the conversations that I have with people are around dogs. And I think this book is just, it's a tribute to all the dogs that we've all known and we've all loved. So I think, every story is unique in its own way, like every relationship is unique in its own way. So therefore the book.
Okay, so there are so many people, who've contributed to this book. And like I said, they're from across profession. At least I couldn't find a way to pinpoint, this might be the criteria or this might be the way you have sort of decided to ask people to contribute. So, how was the experience like, choosing which ones to maybe take, or the whole process of asking people to contribute? And could you just take us on that journey?
Sure. So it's interesting, actually. I wish I could tell you there was this linear way in which I was doing this, but I think it just started with a lot of the writers that I admire, who I also know are dog parents. And a lot of our conversations, as I said, have been around dogs. So I think the first list was actually based on people that I've personally known and interacted with. And also a list of writers who I know, I may not personally know, but I know are pet parents. In fact, Shobhaa was the first person I contacted because she and I have been speaking about Gongli, her dog, and I'm sure she'll talk a bit more about that. So the first list was really a list of writers who were animal lovers. But I think also in my head, part of it was also bringing in the story of people who take care of animals, people who are part of rescue organizations. I've had the honor of knowing a few. Tandrali's a friend. She's a very important part of Friendicos. Atul Sareen, who is another contributor, takes care of an animal rescue in Goa. So I thought it was important to have their stories as well. And then the book, I think, just developed a life of its own. So, writers were talking about other writers who are pet parents. And then, so it just developed its own universe and its own vocabulary. And that's how we arrived at these 45. We started with 30. My initial list was 30 contributors, but I'm so glad that we actually came to what we did, even though I think the editor was having heart attacks thinking about the page extent and everything. But I think every story is really special. And that's how it really grew. It grew over a period of about 2.5 years.
Shobha, since you are one of the first contributors, Hemali started with asking you for your contribution. Will you tell us why you eventually decided to contribute? Also, please tell all the viewers more about Gongli. I think everybody would want to know about.
I wish I could bring her on camera today, but she is a diva and she decides when she wants to be photographed and when she wants to participate and when she doesn't. Today is one of her off moments, off days. Why is a very simple answer is because I love Hemali and I love dogs. And Hemali can ask me to, skydive. I'm very scared of heights and I'll do it for her. So that's a no-brainer. I said yes instantly. Also, I understand Hemali's deep, deep love and commitment as a dog parent. I know how passionately she feels about the subject. So it wasn't something that she was doing in a way that's lighthearted and, hey, let's do a book on dogs. It wasn't that at all. It had also much more serious, what shall I say, contribution to the world of dogs because we have talked about, and she just talked about, including people who have worked tirelessly for the welfare of dogs and the fact that all the contributors were doing it because they love dogs and it was not about the money and that all the royalties from the book will go towards dog welfare was a very compelling reason to participate in the book. And writing about Gongli, I'd never really written about her. So it was challenging as a writer for me to express my feelings for her. She may never be able to figure that out because she won't be able to read the book. But I know that the connect with her is so powerful. It doesn't really need words. And we kind of get each other. We understand one another. So even if she's having a tantrum today, I get that.
But I was just thinking about something that, and this is for all three of you actually. This is a question. So recently, I think it's the Pope who sort of mentioned about how, it's sort of selfish that people now would rather have pets rather than children. I mean, I'm sort of bringing in from there. So now it wasn't very in vogue, I would say, to call ourselves as pet parents. I think people would have pets, but we would not call ourselves as pet parents. The word parent would not be associated with taking care of an animal, probably, right? But it thankfully has changed over the years that people do recognize that, taking care of an animal, is also a great deal of investment. It's not simply for show because people also do that. Like they might have a pet just for the heck of it because, okay, it looks nice on a family picture, it looks nice to say, oh, I've got a pet, whatever it is. So I just wanted, if all three of you could, give your insights into this whole thing of how thankfully now we are evolving and beginning to acknowledge the effort and that should definitely be there when you're adopting or you're buying, whatever it may be, a pet, specifically a dog that does require a certain degree of attention and affection because, you're also expecting it back from a dog.
So who wants to go first? I can answer very quickly that it is a lifelong responsibility. It's not something you do lightly because it's kind of cool on Instagram to be photographed with this gorgeous looking dog. And it cannot be treated in that manner because that amount of respect, the same respect you'd invest in your own biological child, you must have the exact same feelings because the dog is very much a part of your family. It's a member of your family. It's not a toy or an object that you display, which is why it's extremely distressing during the pandemic when a lot of people who had bought dogs for all the wrong reasons, also rationalizing it that they needed companionship during the pandemic, they were lonely, happily abandoned the very same dogs because they couldn't cope up. They couldn't cope up with the responsibility and care that it involves. So you have to think it through very carefully when you think of getting a dog as a member of your family, that is the amount of time and energy and love that you're willing to invest. Otherwise, don't go there. So the term pet parent comes with all of this. It's not something that you do just because you want to look cool. It's something you do because you love dogs and you want them to be a part of your life as much as I'm sure they want you in their life.
Yeah, I agree. I think Shobhaa has actually said it most eloquently. And so, speaking for myself, some of my most rewarding and enriching relationships in life have been with dogs. And so, I see it definitely as a parenting role, and I think that comes with responsibilities, and that comes with the fact that you're actually responsible for a living, breathing, sentient being. I think it's very important to remember that and not assume that you get a pet. A pet is not an accessory. Get a pet only if you're fully committed to devoting your time, energy, love for the next 15 years or however long your pet child lives. If you're lucky, the child will live very long. I think, I mean, to me, like I said, my most rewarding relationships are with dogs. And I'm sure Tandrali can talk a bit more about this. I mean, Friendico sees this whole thing between adoption and taking the right call on which house to give a dog to every day, day after day. And so, Tandrali, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, Hemali. In fact, today morning itself, I got a call from a very affluent family in South Delhi who just got a golden retriever about 4 months back. And so this puppy is now 5 months old. And now the family has realized that they do not have the time to look after the puppy and they want to rehome the puppy. Now, many times people get overwhelmed because they don't understand, they do not do the homework, or they do not understand how much work or commitment a dog is. They see the neighbor, their relatives, their friends having a dog, and they feel it's very easy and they can just have a dog. So, you know how the Pope said that, it is selfish to only have dogs and not have kids. I would say it's a personal call. You do not have a child just because you are expected to have a child. You have a child because you want to have a child, and you know you are going to give it your 100% to be a good parent to your child. It's the same thing I believe personally applies to a pet. You do not get a pet because your neighbor has a pet, or a pet looks good, or it is the in thing to do, or it's just something that you have fallen in love for the moment. It's not a car you buy and you don't like the model anymore and you sell it and buy the practical one tomorrow. The same way, you don't get a pet because you have seen someone have a pet and you just love the idea of having a pet. You have a pet because you understand the commitment you are taking on, because it is a living being. And most importantly, a pet is never going to grow up. Your child is going to grow up someday. Your child is going to leave the nest someday. Your child is going to be independent and be able to take care of itself someday. But a dog is never going to be able, even a cat is never going to be able to take care of himself or herself. So when you make the commitment, you make that commitment till death do us apart. So yes, I think that it is not selfish at all to, take a conscious decision about whether you want to have a child or a pet. But here, as we are talking about dogs, yes, very, very important that you be very sure about what you are taking on, because you are going to make a lot of compromise about your lifestyle, about your work, about the amount of time you're going to devote to your dog. And you may have to put your dog before your own needs and your own, your own lifestyle. For example, many people who have dogs have to think 10 times before they do a holiday. Their holiday has to be around the dog. So, okay, it's a bit tricky because see what happens is that every day at the shelter, I mean, I'm talking only about Friendicos. Can you imagine how many other shelters are across the country? So if we are alone receiving, okay, Friendicos is one of the oldest shelters in the whole country, not only in Delhi. We have intake of 30 to 50 animals every month. And when I say 30 to 50 animals, I'm talking about permanent animals who have nowhere else to go. It can be an abandoned puppy who's lost his parents. It could be an abandoned pet. It could be a Indie Desi. It can be a pedigreed dog. It can be a lost pet. It can be someone's surrender. But whatever, it is an animal who has no home to go. And now we have an intake of 30 to 50 animals a month. But practically, we do not have the same adoption rate. It's very unfortunate, but in the whole year, the adoption rate is only 150 animals. That is like, I don't think it's even 5% of the total number of animals that we take in. Now, even in this 150 animals, we have to be very, very careful about the homes we give them to, because they've already been abandoned once. This is their second chance at a home. We obviously do not want them to go through this once more, which means that the screening process has to be very intense. But before the screening, another thing that we consider when we give up a dog or a cat for adoption is, so I have to choose the ones who are easy. So it goes like good temperament, then it goes like young dogs, then it goes like pedigreed dogs. Then it goes like a special needs dog who we feel is not suitable for the shelter life and who's not adjusting. Then there are dogs who are never happy to be around other dogs. Such dogs need to be in a home and be the single pet. In a shelter situation, a dog like that can never ever settle or be happy or will let another dog be happy. That's how it works. So we choose the animal. That is the process. The first step is to choose which dogs will go on adoption program. There's 3 adoption centers, which I started over the last 3 years because I just got fed up of fostering. I, at a time, fostered. At one point of time, I had 7 fosters in the house with my 10 dogs. And it became 17 dogs. And I realized that the stress is going to kill me. So we started discussing about starting an adoption center. And luckily, in the last 3 years, we were able to start 3 centers.
So could you tell us more about that? That how the COVID has worked both ways in a way? Just like for even, humans, that for some, it became actually a way to reconnect with their families. Finally, they had time to spend. And for sometimes it also brought in conflict. So, yeah.
It did, yes. So I think there was this period when COVID first struck, when everyone was completely, astounded. We didn't really know how to make sense of this completely altered world. And, it was all grim and dreary and we didn't know what the future held. And here were our dogs who were delighted. I mean, they were very happy with the fact that they had so much human time. And dogs are very social creatures, and most of them really work on, building that relationship with the humans, and they're very attached to the humans. So I think what was really not really amusing, but what was really heartwarming was that you had these furry creatures who were looking completely delighted with this change of circumstance. They had all the time in the world with their humans. They were seeing most family members around most of the time. So I think that actually brought a lot of comfort to us. The fact that in a world which was so uncertain, you had this abundance of love. You had this faith that your dogs had in you, that things would be okay. So that's what I really meant when I said in the introduction that, our dogs were the ones who were actually delighted with the change in circumstance because they were getting all this bonus time with their parents. But I think that is actually true of, like you said, a lot of relationships as well, because I mean, the past 2 years have been such where we've spent so much time at home, we've spent so much time with each other, that in a strange way, you've just picked up on those connections, you've built some connections. But yes, coming back to dogs, I think they've had it good.
So again, something that I would want all of you to answer. I mean, I know all of you have contributed already here, but could you also tell us some other incident, maybe with not this particular pet, maybe over the years or probably a first interaction with a dog? That I think that would be something that I would want to know. Your first ever interaction with a pet or just a dog. Maybe it's a stray, it might not be a pet, and what has stayed with you from that interaction?
Right. So this might be the time for me to plug all 45 stories in the book and say that we have some delightful stories. These are personal experiences. They are across, prose. There's poetry. We have a dog who's penning haikus. We have photo essays. We have a recipe. Absolutely. We have a world famous chef giving a recipe that his favorite dog loves. So I mean, there are these delightful 45 anecdotes that you have. Some, of course, are sad because obviously when you are a pet parent, loss is something that you have to take on board at some point. But what really underlines them is the joy in the relationship, the joy that you derive from your dog and your dog derives from you. My first interaction is actually interesting. It wasn't very early on. I grew up afraid of dogs. And there wasn't any rational reason. I didn't have any bad experience or anything. It was just that I was very timid. I was timid and fearful of most things, including dogs. And then it's only after I got married and we decided to get a dog that we got in Simba, who was our first dog child. And that's when my world changed entirely. I mean, I usually am at a loss for words when it comes to talking about the profound impact that Simba had on me. And actually not just Simba, after that, every dog we've had has had a very, very deep impact on me. But I think what really blew me away was this abundance of love and this abundance of faith. And that makes you, that So there's this saying that you should try and be the person that your dog thinks you are, right? And I think that kind of sums it up for me. It's every interaction for me has been incredible.
Shobhaa, would you like to share yours?
Yeah, I was just thinking of what Hemali was saying about the pandemic and how it impacted dogs and our relationship with our pets. But I'm just wondering what happens in a family where one or the other is COVID positive, or one or the other has to take care of elderly parents, and the entire house is turned upside down because of this crisis. And who's left to actually take care of a pet who doesn't know what's going on? I mean, it can be a very traumatic and very trying experience both ways. I was just trying to visualize a scenario where you're taking the elderly, maybe your in-laws or someone close to you. Both partners are in some way affected by and are in isolation. Then what happens to the dog? I mean, these are all scenarios that I'm sure a lot of people who went through this crisis came up with solutions which sort of worked for them. But for me, it would be a terrifying prospect as to who would look after Gongli and little Bijou if our house was turned upside down with a crisis of that nature. I wouldn't say that I was I was raised in a dog-loving family. I certainly wasn't. I hadn't met a dog properly till much later in life. And I wasn't fascinated by dogs per se. I mean, I'd admire some dogs maybe randomly, but it's not that I craved for a dog at all. And the idea of a dog, for a lot of people, I think, is born when they have children of their own who then want and express a desire to have a dog. And then you don't want to disappoint them because they love the idea of having a pet. And that's what happened to me when I had my first child, which was more than 46 years ago. And there was this great need to have a dog in that family. And it's been a love affair since then, because the little babies were raised along with other babies who happen to have 4 legs, but they were treated in exactly the same way. And ever since then, I think between us in our family, my children are married, most of them, and we have 8 dogs that we love and adore, who are very much a part of our family life, very much a part of all our interactions. We have lots of dog dates where dogs go over and hang with the other dogs, and it's like one big extended happy family. But that love for dogs came quite late in life, and I don't mind confessing, it's just like I didn't actually adore everybody's children when I was much younger. I was busy with my career, and my goals were quite different. It's not that I would grab other people's babies and go kitschy-cooing with them, not at all. So similarly, I didn't go pet other people's dogs and say, "Oh my God, I wish I had a dog." So the babies and the dogs came together in my life in a brilliant and fabulous way. And now, as adults themselves with kids of their own, it's now the 3rd or 4th generation, I hope, we should grow up with dogs as a very natural part of family life. But that wasn't true for me at all.
Tandrali?
My first interaction with dogs was when I was 3 years old. Funnily, my parents both are the only dog lovers from their respective families. Like no one from my father's family are really big dog lovers. Neither from my mother's side. My parents were dog lovers and are dog lovers, sorry. And my first dog was when I was 3 years old. And it was a street dog that my father dog napped from the streets for me because I was demanding I wanted a dog. And this dog used to come to our back lane almost every day. And she was a female of around 2.5 years old. And one fine day, my father just grabbed the dog, put a chain on her, and I had my first pet. And we kept her chained for the first 1 month, to be honest. And after that 1 month, so my father was like, chain her up for a month, feed her every day, she's going to become your dog. And that's what happened, actually. It's not the right way to go about having a dog, and I wouldn't advise that. But, 35 years back, that's what I got. So we kept the dog for a month. I named her Tommy. And she was about 2.5 years old. And 35 years back, there was no concept of sterilization. So 1 month later, when we opened her up, she of course ran out and she would go gallivanting all over the neighborhood and then come back to live with us. She slept in our house, she ate our food, and she was literally my dog. And my parents had no such this thing about, you're a child, you can't touch the dog, he's going to bite you. My parents always believe that you're going to learn your lesson the hard way. So it's okay if you get bitten, we get you vaccinated. So that's how I grew up. So, and then Tommy used to go and, mate with all the dogs in the area.
Hemali, since anyway the royalty from the book, it's going to go to rescue organizations that work closely with, animal rescue. I also wanted to know that you have been associated with a lot of these groups as well. Could you tell us more about it? And you've also said that, people, these groups, people who are animal rescuers, have also been in a way your role models. So could you tell us more about that?
So I think, yes, so all royalties go to animal welfare associations, and Friendicos is one of them. I think it would be presumptuous and grand of me to say that I'm associated with animal welfare in the sense that I do a little bit, I do what I can, but there is just so much to be done. I have worked with Tandrali to help maybe, foster dogs who cannot be sent to a shelter because they have such aggressive past. So that's one. I I support a treatment clinic in Goa, which Atul Sareen runs, which has now, this is about 1.5 years old, and it's now treated about 100 puppies. And I try and help with anyone who needs any social media support, or there've been some campaigns that we've been part of, which we've run. But having said that, like I said, there is just so much to be done, and that's why I say animal people who work in rescue are my heroes, because it takes a different kind of fortitude to do what you do day after day, to look past the sadness, to look past the disappointment, to look past the needs that you have on a daily basis. And just do it day after day. So I think, I have my biggest heroes, like I said, have always been people in animal rescue, because I think they just do a phenomenal job. And if I can, at some point, I'd definitely like to do a lot more than I do. What I do, like I said, it's presumptuous to say that I do a lot. I don't. I would love to do a lot more. I would love to support in any way that I can. And I think that is also part of, this is something I've seen interestingly with a lot of other pet parents, that when we, for instance, spoke about royalties going to animal welfare, everyone readily said yes. And that's because I think everyone somewhere wants to do something and help in whatever way they can. Yes, would love to see what more we can do.
Right. So this has, I think, been one of the most fruitful conversations I have had in a long time, and on a topic that obviously I'm very personally invested in. Thank you, all of you, for being a part of this conversation and for sharing all of this, because I think for anybody, specifically the viewer, like I said, from wanting to adopt to not being unsure, I think all of you shared incidents where maybe not everyone began with being somebody who loved dogs or knew enough about dogs. And we've all reached a point where we now can't are not able to live without them, I think. So I think this would be really also helpful for people who wish to probably adopt a dog or think about adopting one for whatever reason it may be. Thank you so much for coming and talking about your experiences on ThePrint Softcover. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.